Live from Las Vegas, Nevada. You're watching Shaking It Up with the Sharks. Starring Johnny Richardson and Katie Meadows.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special guest tonight. That's right, shaking it up with the Sharks. It's an amazing gentleman here with me this evening, Jake Gallen, everybody. He is the man. Amazing story. Not only does he have his own podcast, The Guest List, out here in Las Vegas, but this guy knows it all. He's been through the nightclub scene, to cryptocurrency, to antiques. He just has an amazing story. So, Jake, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Johnny, thank you for allowing me into this beautiful home up here.
Hey, it's our pleasure.
It's seriously a pleasure. We just met literally 2 months ago, but it feels like I've known you for 2 years at this point. I keep running into you everywhere that I go.
I know,
That's how small
crazy.
Vegas really is.
It definitely is. That's when you know when you're surrounded by good people. Like I mentioned to you earlier, that we were talking with somebody about buying a house, and right away I said, hey, you got to meet this guy, Jake, and they're like, already have. So when you keep running into the same people, I'm like, all right, then you're in good company. Mm-hmm. When somebody's like, I have no idea who that person is, it's like, oh, that's not a good sign necessarily.
Yeah, although you mentioned that I come from a nightclub background, I worked at Omnia for 6 years, and then before that I even worked at Planet Hollywood Pool for 5 years. I was surrounded by partying. I was always really fascinated with like entrepreneurship in Vegas. Although I am born and raised out here in Las Vegas, I am a unicorn. I found out recently that only 25% of people who live in Vegas were actually raised here. So it's a very transient town. On my show, I always ask my guests, what does Las Vegas mean to them? And the majority of them say opportunity. So it shows that people are coming out here with the entrepreneurial mindset, but from a local perspective, they don't see it that way because they could just go onto the strip and make large amounts of money and then be content with the rest of their lives. So once you do tap into that entrepreneurial network out here in Vegas, you realize that the city is a small, big town.
It is, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more. I like to call it the golden handcuffs at the end of the day. You end up getting a job, like a timeshare brought myself out here, for example. Great job, and I say that word because it was a job. But light hours, vacation like crazy, great income, but what do you have at the end of the day? You aren't establishing anything, strong future or something you build or something you're known for. Like myself, timeshare, I wasn't going to have on my coffin Wyndham printed across the top. You know, I wanted to be known for something cooler than that. So it's huge opportunity out in the city. That was one of the things I noticed when I moved here, which is awesome for yourself. That's an interesting fact. I was always curious about that percentage on people that stick around, stay. Because unfortunately, this city will bring the best out of you or will bring the worst out of you. So I could see how people that stayed here were just brought up in the wrong way, didn't have vision, didn't have the right people surrounding them. Either they fell apart or they said, I got to get out of this city. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a lot of it growing up, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Vegas, there's so many attractions that allure many people over here. Outside of just the hospitality industry, housing is pretty affordable. I know the market's on the rise now. It seems like it's being bought up by remote workers, at least from a lot of guests that I've come on. They're still making their lump sum of cash working in Silicon Valley or some sort of financial service, but then they could come over here, remote work, buy the property up, and then build their own lives. So I think in the next few years, we're going to see a huge entrepreneurial push for those people who are becoming acclimated over the next few years. They're going to want to do something outside of just sitting at home and working. And so there's a lot of room to grow. There's no state taxes out here. Yes, the education system isn't the best, but then that just pronounces opportunity in so many other ways. And we're starting to see that now with the Raiders moving out here. The Golden Knights have been on fire. Conventions are coming out here. Vegas is on its way to become the #1 convention city in the entire world. And it seems like more things just pop up more and more. I've been a part of the tech community out here, which has not been pronounced for so long. Tony Hsieh tried to do this and a few other people have, but now we're actually seeing more attraction, and I've been going to these monthly meetups over the last few months, and they've just been growing into the 10s to 50s, and probably the next one will be up into the hundreds. So there's all these sub-entrepreneurial markets growing out here, but soon they will flourish.
Now, as far as people that are interested in tech, like what about yourself? What part of it that interests you? What do you want to do with it? Like, what are you looking to get out of it with the meetup groups?
Yeah, so I think Vegas operates in this 3D context, and what I mean by that is it's kind of a what can you do for me now kind of town. Instant gratification. Those who work on the Strip, you provide a service in person, whatever it is, whether you're serving them drinks, or you're a concierge service, or you're booking tables, and then that guest has instant gratification and tips you, right? But what Vegas hasn't been doing very well is applying the 4D code, which is the technological layer, which is like content creation, social media, the integration to back-end systems. Like Vegas is stagnated in that sense. And so a handful of people in the community have realized this, and we've been trying to push it. But when it comes to technological overlays, they're defined by their internet communities. And so these kind of things take time. But now we see places like Resort World and Circa that are building out podcast studios and allowing content creators to roam free through the casino because they realize that internet communities are what's going to dominate Vegas in the future.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, there's I want to say resort, a short-term rental company that we work with over in Southern Highlands, and that's what they did. Similar, you can come in, rent a place it's really designed for somebody that's like in transition between houses, which is great right now because we're so short on homes, but they came up with podcast studios and everything else. So what I'm getting at is I see a lot of people doing that because that is what everybody's after right now. It's more exposure, internet content, keeping your face out there, and what better city than Las Vegas?
It's so true. When the pandemic started, I realized that the creator economy was going to just overtake society. And it's really become that way. You need to be able to take your brand, your mission, your position, and take it with you because the world is becoming very nomadic, right? It's becoming very borderless, especially with how technology is going. So if you can't share your message digitally, then you're not going to succeed in the future. So that's why I opened up the podcast 2 weeks into the pandemic. I was like, I need to network with individuals that have of like-minded as me, high net worth, and they have some sort of mission. And what better way to do that than with a podcast? Simply, I'm sure you realize these effects as well. I realized that casino owners, entrepreneurs, they won't give you the time of day because they're busy, but if you tell them you have a podcast, then all of a sudden they give you 3 hours of their time. And to me, it just seems like such a life hack where now I can talk with these individuals on the show, and then afterwards, now they feel more comfortable with you. You can end up with some sort of business deal or a negotiation where mutual people have some sort of benefits.
How long did you have the idea for the podcast?
This is so funny. The podcast idea always circles. Everybody always sits on it for multiple years. I thought about it in 2018.
Okay.
Originally, this is when I was running my first business, which was an antique store called Next Gen Pickers, and my second business at the same time called Chameleon Verified Network, which fought ticket fraud. It was a verification application. And I thought of this idea because I'd been such a big fan of Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and some of these other huge podcasters who were able to articulate their ideas in a concise way, but also went against the traditional grain of media. And so you see people like Joe Rogan talking about doing DMT and Tim Ferriss talking about the 4-hour work week and how you don't need 40 hours to succeed. And that really opened my eyes. And so in 2018, I was like, why is there no Joe Rogan Vegas? It really just amazed me because this city is so diverse, so many ways. It's diverse culturally. It's a transient town. As I said, 75% of people who live out here were not born here. It's a diverse in an entertainment aspect. In what other city can you go snowboarding at Mount Charleston and then go hang out at Encore Beach Club in the same day? That just
100%.
That just doesn't happen. And it's diverse politically. It's generally a purple state. It swings back and forth. And it's beginning to diverse its economy. Yes, we were the hardest hit city at 30.1% during the pandemic. But as I have talked with over 140 different entrepreneurs in the city since I started, I'm realizing that there's these sub-markets that are beginning to pop up in Vegas. And I'm just helping the city try to identify those so that we can all kind of collab together.
What did you put most of your focus into when the pandemic hit? When it was March and there was a go to your house, shut the doors, batten down the hatches. What was your mindset like? What you said, I'm going to dive into X.
Yeah, it was immediately, my first thought was the podcast, because I'd been sitting around for it for so long. Like I said before, I was working in a nightclub, so I was on a night crawler type schedule, and just like, you just are so lethargic all the time. And I knew at that point that I needed to start the show. I needed to look very intuitively and introspectively figure out what I wanted to do. And throughout 2020, I echoed this message, and if some of my listeners are listening to this, they're probably gonna slap me because I say it so much, is that 2020 was the best rebranding opportunity we're gonna get in our entire lives. Where else in history have we been able to sit around for a year and focus on what we wanna do in the future? And so I took that idea and I just ran with it, and I started recording 2 to 3 episodes per week, and we hit about 20,000 audio downloads and 20,000 YouTube views in a year with an 85% Las Vegas audience.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's super intense. Mm-hmm. So yeah, while you're working in a nightclub, it was hard just to wrap your mind around it. It's just like you mentioned even before the show that it was just like days would run into nights and vice versa, and you're just like beat, even though it was a lighter schedule, but everything that comes along with that lifestyle when you're in the nightlife, you're just living it, correct?
Yeah, you have like a distorted view of reality. When you're working at these mega nightclubs, you have superstars coming in, actors, superstar DJs making 6 figures. And then you have table service, where I was a busser, people coming in and spend 5, 6, 7 figures in a night. And it just makes you kind of think about what reality actually stands for. Yes, humanity does have a priority on partying. It's insane. Like, people are paying 20, 30x markup on alcohol to have a table so that you can attract a significant other for the night, or if you want to flaunt your ego, or whatever the different power dynamic mechanisms stand behind the nightclub. But then you're also working with supermodels your entire life, and it just like, I had fun the first 2 years, but after that, I've just like was trying to find any way to get out of the industry. And so that's when I really dove into entrepreneurship. And growing up, I always knew that there were entrepreneurs out here, but it's been very siloed out here because it's so easy to go on the strip and make 6 figures serving banquets or serving drinks.
Yeah, so when you were watching this happen, was there any moment when you're in the nightclub working like, this is just out of hand, I'm sick of this, I'm ready to walk out now? Was there any of that? I could imagine it gets that crazy. You're like, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah. There's 2 different ways to approach it. There's the internal perspective on how it affects your life, right? You go to bed at 6 in the morning, you're waking up at 2, 3 p.m. Sometimes you're going out to drink after work, and so then you're not getting home until 3 or 4, and then you're waking up to go to work at 10, and you're just, it's so convoluted in the way that you think about life. And then when you're sitting there and you have a table that spends, 6 figures, obviously you're going to have a good payday from it, but it just makes you reframe your life and makes you wonder where the priority is in life. Like, 6 figures could literally change multiple families' lives. Granted, not everybody needs to donate their money, but it just makes you understand humanity's priorities.
Yeah, well, you see that, like, everybody has fun going out drinking. We've all been there. But I'm sure like the chaos with somebody spending $100,000 at a table or more. You mentioned even you've seen up to $1 million on multiple tables. People are probably just so chaotic at that point and just drunk off of everything. Mm-hmm. They're just nuts. It's got to make you just like think, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, and the nightclub, it was the explosion for Las Vegas. Las Vegas has gone through multiple repurposing phases. It goes every 15, 20 years, and we're about to go into another one. In the 70s, it was all about like dollar cocktails and cheap steak dinners and very lavish, dress up, fancy kind of allure. In the 90s, it was all about family. You had like the MGM theme park and Wet n Wild and arcades all over. And then in the late 2000s, you had the EDM boom and the mega nightclubs and the DJs and EDC and all this stuff. And now we're turning into another repurposing phase where it's all about sports and expansion. And eventually internet communities and content integration and individuality. And so we're kind of really on the forefront of that next evolution of Vegas.
So you're really getting out of it at the right time while that shift was going on. And I know that something else that you work on as far as cryptocurrency as well. And when did you start working on that? Were you working on that while you were at the nightlife?
Yeah. So my first Bitcoin purchase was April 2017. I was turned on to crypto from a family friend who was working on an altcoin project. For those who understand crypto, an altcoin is pretty much anything that is not Bitcoin, or it's also called a shitcoin, depending on your perspective. Depending on your perspective of how much of a Bitcoin maximalist you are or not. But crypto really opened my eyes to self-sovereignty and the corruption of the political system and the fiscal system, and how these social constructs in life are that, just social constructs. They aren't absolute. And so I went down the rabbit hole, and for literally weeks and months, I was just like, oh my God, this is the future. I've never been so convicted in my entire life as to when I turned to cryptocurrency. And so for the next 2.5 to 3 years, I was taking a third to a half of what I was making at the nightclub and just buying Bitcoin, buying Ethereum, and buying some shitcoins as well. And it came up to a point where at the beginning of 2020, or beginning of 2021, excuse me, I had enough money that I was just like, I'm not returning to the nightlife, and I wanted to pursue crypto and entrepreneurship and networking in Vegas, and tried to find an intersection of all these, and it was kind of hard to do that. But now that I have the freedom and the networks from the podcast, I started a blockchain meetup in collaboration with UNLV, and some casino operators are interested, and we're getting a lot of traction. And we held the first meetup about a week ago from the time of this recording, and we had over 40 different interested enthusiasts, investors, creators, entrepreneurs in the crypto space who are showing interest, and it's just going to keep growing from there.
Good for you. Was there any downfalls when you're learning crypto? It's like, man, why did I do that? This was stupid.
Yeah, when you're building a brand new financial system, it's going to come with a lot of growing pains, especially in an open source system where any single person or entity can contribute to the network itself. That's what makes Bitcoin and crypto so awesome, is that there aren't any gates like a lot of the institutions like to put up, whether it's a university or traditional media or anything of that nature. With crypto, it's all inclusive. As long as you want to put the effort in and show it, then you can contribute and you can find a lot of success. Whereas a lot of other industries, it becomes a political system, and you can find yourself in a high net worth position without having to do anything besides having a few friends in that area.
That's pretty impressive. And you mentioned UNLV as well. What exactly are you doing with UNLV?
So the first meetup was at Blackfire Innovation. It's the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park. It's over on Sunset in between Durango and Buffalo. It's a 144-acre property that's owned by the university in collaboration with Caesars and a few other hospitality and gaming groups. And their hopes is to accelerate the innovation in the hospitality and gaming scene. But they also, since the UNLV Office of Economic Development is there, and I made friends with the woman who was running the entire building in that space because she was a fan of my podcast. We went over there and talked with her, and they hosted us at this multi-million-dollar 4-story building. And they're going to be building out a startup accelerator program. They're attracting different tech companies from Silicon Valley and across the country to come down here as well. And I think eventually that's going to become the tech hub for Las Vegas. And they've been working with us because they know that I've been really into crypto, and I have another partner, Chris, that's been working on it with me as well. And we founded a company called Native Research, which is going to focus on accelerating crypto adoption in Vegas through educational models, and then eventually it'll bloom into crypto products.
Educational models, explain that a little bit more.
So right now we started a podcast. We have not come up with a full running name. Right now we just call it Viva Las Crypto, just for fun. Me and him were the first 2 guests, but then it's going to feature a lot of crypto professionals in the city, whether it's somebody from Resort World who partnered with Gemini, which is one of the most popular crypto exchanges, or some of the prominent coders or developers or organizers who live out here, they've all expressed interest to come on the show. And so that'll serve as a model for the meetup where I can host a live podcast with that crypto professional, and then the audience can sit around and ask questions as well and serve as a workshop. We're also working on creating animation videos, blockchain programs for the university that'll also be translated into Spanish in a bilingual manner, because Latin America is growing with their crypto adoption. We just saw El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. First country in the entire world to do that, no taxes. You can use Bitcoin or dollars to buy your products out there, or your meals. And so we're trying to amplify that message by translating things into Spanish, and we have a lot more things going on outside of that as well.
Really? What now? Those countries right there. What other countries are on the uptick as far as crypto goes?
Yeah, so South America, Latin America is growing super fast. Obviously, we had El Salvador just adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. Paraguay, Mexico, Brazil, Panama, and I think there's 3 or 4 other Latin countries are all introducing legislation into their government in the form of a bill, so that they can also have Bitcoin as legal tender, because the US dollar has been declining since its inception. Its purchasing power has been decreased by over 99% since its inception, since we got off the gold standard. So the dollar is on its way out, and for a currency that can't be manipulated by any government, like we saw with the dollars, 40% of all dollars ever existed were printed since, or the 40% of all the dollars that ever existed were printed at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So think of that. Inflation is going to be anywhere from 5% to 10% every year for the next 4 years. So you need to store your money in some sort of hard asset, whether that be Bitcoin, gold, precious metals, equities. Even we see things like Pokemon cards and collectibles that are all going crazy because just of the amount of money that's been printed, $6 trillion.
I didn't even realize that. Pokemon cards?
Yeah,
Really?
anything that can hold any sort of value is seeing a dramatic increase in its price. That's why crypto has been going off the wall. We saw lumber increased like 2,000% over the last few years. It's come down a little bit. Pretty much anything that has some sort of value, Magic the Gathering cards, collectibles, antiques, anything, just because they've printed $6 trillion that's now existing in the system.
What about antiques? Are you still working with antiques?
I don't work with them hands-on. My father was a big antique collector. That's how I got into it. He was doing storage wars type stuff after the '08 financial crisis. I grew up
Really?
in like a lower middle class area, so that was how we survived for some years. And so once I was making money from the nightclub, I thought, what a better way than to enter my first entrepreneurial endeavor than with my father in an interest that he was already very familiar with.
So is he's doing that out here in Vegas, I take it, really, and he'll go get a release of X amount of units at a U-Haul or whatever it is?
Yeah, you go mostly to storage units. He goes to estate liquidations and yard sales, and there's a huge collector community out here, literally hundreds if not thousands of people who are all looking for different products. And that's one thing that I learned from owning an antique store, is the way that people value a product. It comes down to like nostalgia, it comes down to how well the product is put together, the utility. Value is created in so many different ways, and that's something that we see with Bitcoin, right? A lot of people say that it's not backed by anything. Well, it's backed by a belief system, right? The dollar is backed by the government, but what backs the government? The military. So essentially the US dollar is backed because the government says that it's the world's reserve currency. It's not backed by gold anymore. So these kind of ideas that I went through my entire life taught me like what value is, and especially with collectors, people come and look for the most wild and outlandish stuff that you would never think.
Like what kind of stuff?
Our most popular products were generally old typewriters, old kitchenware, old radios were really popular, and salt and pepper shakers sold
Really?
A lot, yeah.
Really? They went for a high dollar amount, or was it?
Yeah, usually we could sell salt and pepper shakers for like $50, and people would come in and buy
Really?
that just based off of the quality or what the salt and pepper shaker represented.
Now, what were they doing with them? They just wanted them strictly to have in their house.
A lot of collectors, yeah, especially because I live down in the Arts District now, and I moved down there because I think that's the fastest growing community and culture out here in Vegas. That's where it's being built. But a lot of those old Vegas vintage homes, which I've been inside, are all full of just like antiques and collectibles from the families who lived down in that area for over 30 years that represent their values and morals.
Really, it's pretty impressive stuff. I've never gotten into antiques. I know there's a lot of money, but I'll be one of those people that I would be standing at a yard sale and there's something that's worth $200,000 and I'm clueless. Can you pinpoint stuff like that, being around it so much?
Yeah, I think it also depends on if you're selling at a yard sale or if you're selling inside of a commercial space. Like down in the Arts District on Main Street, there's anywhere between 5 to 10 antique stores, and some of those items in there are selling for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 because obviously they have to pay their rent, which is probably around the same thing. And so they have to up the price. But for people who are collecting antiques, they generally have a lot of money and they will put that much money into one item if they think it's valuable to them, because some things are actually literally priceless. Like we saw Beanie Babies literally selling for hundreds of $1,000s back in the day.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Holy smoke. I don't follow Beanie at all. So I
It's
couldn't
definitely
tell
fallen
you.
now.
Really? Not as much now, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting. That definitely is. Now, a lot of times your dad would go to these storage wars and so on and so forth. Are people like searching? They got to be searching the entire United States for this stuff, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
people
we
out there
had-
just kicking out down doors all over the place.
When we would go to storage auctions, we would actually see a huge amount of Californians coming down just for that, because a lot of the storage units were actually cheaper in Vegas than they were in California because of the rental space and everything of that nature. So you get collectors that come from all over because you're looking for that one value item, for whether it's their own personal collection or if they're trying to complete a collection to sell online. But if you have everything of one set, then the multiple on that set is much higher than if you only had 4 out of 5 of that set.
And that was in Vegas they come to.
They'd come to Vegas, yeah, because everything is cheaper out here.
Really? I was figuring like a place like California, they'd come across more expensive items and maybe not as new. Is that what it is over in California?
It's possible. It's just because of the nature of California, and also there's more taxes, that everything generally sees like a 2 or 3x multiple, because those people have to pay high rents and they're paying a lot for their meals and everything else. So with Vegas, it's just become a hotspot. Also because it's so transient, you don't know what people are collecting out here.
Yeah.
Because people are from all over the world. When I applied for Omnia nightclub in 2015, we had 5,000 servers and 2,000 bussers applied, and
Really?
they only hired 70 of each position.
Really? There was that many busters? 70?
So yeah, 70 when we first started. Yeah, 70 busters, 70 girls, 5,000 applied, and 2,000 bussers. I'm not sure with the bartenders, but
Really?
yeah. So they're only selecting 1 to 2. But I met people that literally came from different countries to come out here for these positions.
Really? Holy smokes. I guess so. That's a pretty big place, Omnia. How many bussers are on there on a typical night?
Generally, if it's a full venue, generally they're running with like 50 or 60
Really?
at a time. Yeah, there's 100 tables. These mega nightclubs take high priority in hospitality. So if you're spending, let's just say $10,000 on a table, you want that busser and server to be there all night. Like that's no chump change. You know, that's literally a brand new car or a down payment on a house. So they try to take very good care of their clients to make sure that they came back. Because when I worked at Omnia, and this is kind of an ethos that I run by, our manager would say that, you know, Omnia, this world-class nightclub, that's what brings the guests in. But what brings the guests coming back is you guys, the staff.
service.
And we would see clients come back night after night every time they're in town. And some people come to Vegas once a month, once every other week. Like some people come 15, 20 times a year.
Really?
They just can't get enough. And so you want those clients to keep coming back. And so it's all about the service. And that's why I like talking with entrepreneurs in Vegas, because I think that hospitality mindset, or the ultra hospitality, is kind of like entrenched into the natives out here.
Was there any really impressive entrepreneurs that really spiked your interest when you were working there in the nightclub?
In the nightclub, I wouldn't say so much. Some of the guests. The cool thing with working there, and some employees realize this, some don't, is that if you're serving one of these high net worth individuals, the gatekeepers have been cut out, right? So it's just you and this guy who's worth $1 billion, $500 million, or whatever it is. So you could build a relationship with them and then work on business outside of that. Granted, they are in a fun environment, but a lot of these people are very open, their guards are down, they just want to have a good time. So you could make a good pitch to a friendship, a business, an idea, anything.
Really? Did you end up with a lot of strong relationships out of that when you did that?
I have some friends that I communicate with when they're in town, but the majority of my podcasting career and entrepreneurial endeavors were actually operated outside of the nightclub.
Okay.
Because all of my interviews are all in person. So I have had some people that have come in town come on the show, but right now I've just been focused on like the locals of Vegas because I'm just super bullish on the city.
And what about right now? What's your vision with the podcast at the moment?
Continuing on with 2 guests per week, sometimes 3. I'm focusing right now on expanding my content creation outside of just the podcast. So I've been introducing blockchain ideas, podcasting ideas, and kind of just navigating that whole entire world because I was a huge critic of content creation for a long time, actually. And it wasn't until I inserted myself into the world back in March of 2020 that I realized the importance of content creation. Yeah, I used to call it a cop-out. I used to call YouTubers clowns or show ponies and stuff like that. I just I didn't understand it. I always thought I was an open-minded person, but I was very closed-minded
Not so
to
much,
that.
though.
Yeah, but now I really understand it and I really get it and I understand the power of internet communities because you can really make a name for yourself with just 1,000 strong supporters.
Yeah, because you saw it yourself. You came in and we had this talk before. You're successful pretty quickly coming out of the nightlife industry, and then you picked up a sponsor just like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Manscaped sponsors the Guest List podcast. I like to align with them because they were sponsored Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, a lot of these other. They're the second strongest podcasting sponsorship brand in the entire world, and so it's cool to get paid from them. I wanted to understand what goes on the back end, the relationship, going through the motions, reading, does it affect the audience? There's so many nuances that tie into it, but it's also led to other sponsors reaching out to me as well. And I'm not looking per se to just make a ton of money off the podcast. Yes, that will come at some point, but I see the podcast as a leveraged opportunity to
get your message out.
To get your message out, and then just continue to build a network. Because another popular podcaster told me this is that podcasting is one of the only places or endeavors in the world where you get to share credibility with somebody else. So that's why everyone loves Joe Rogan, is because he shared credibility with pretty much every credible person on the entire planet. So for me to share credibility with local entrepreneurs and leaders, it just only magnifies my message, but also the mission that I'm on, and then it just gathers people around. It does seem dark at times because this isn't something that's been introduced to the city, especially in a town that's been focused on hospitality. But eventually somebody has to piggyback and strongman it, and I'm just happy to do it.
Yeah, you do an amazing job at it, and just your whole story all around as far as something you just mentioned, networking, relationships, being a core in Las Vegas, period, across the board. You've done an amazing job with it because I see you in every event that I go to. It's like, oh, there's Jake again.
That's why I said I feel like I know you. It's only been 2 months.
Yeah, every so you've done amazing at it. You had that vision. You didn't go back to it. You burnt your bridges, or I'm sure you left on a good relationship, but your mindset's like, I'm not going back. I'm going straight forward, and you have definitely dived into it 100%.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a lot of hard work. There was a huge educational up battle in terms of understanding AV equipment. I did not know anything. I learned pretty much everything from YouTube and just reaching out to people. And one thing I learned too, which I didn't realize, is that you can just send a DM to a lot of these verified accounts or entrepreneurs or people that you look up to, and the majority of the time they respond. For some reason, I always thought they would never respond to me. I'm just a little guy at the time who had 1,000 followers, but the majority of them end up responding, and then you just build networks from there. And so that was something that really caught me off guard, but has really kind of fortified my message and mission.
Yeah, I always say this constantly to people around me, squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you don't ask for it, people are people at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what blue chip they have or anything else. They're just looking to make a relationship like you are. And also at the same time, they're looking for new ideas and somebody that's creative around them, same level of mindset. 'Cause we all deal with it. There's a good crowd around us and there's bad crowds, and we stay away from the bad crowd. So you reach out to somebody, it's not really that hard at the end of the day. You just have a voice.
And a lot of these successful people want to share their message, or they want to teach somebody about it. Man, even just me being in it for a year now, I want to share my message with everyone else. So I always encourage everyone to reach out to me, and I'll respond as much as possible. Sometimes now I understand that if I don't respond, it's just because I've been crowded with DMs, which now I do understand from that point. But a lot of these entrepreneurs that I talk with, even after we're done recording, they're like, wow, I learned a lot. Or I get a text afterwards and they're like, hey, you motivated me to work harder.
That's
like,
awesome.
Like all these different encouraging messages, which I just I couldn't anticipate unless you put yourself through that mission.
Yeah, you do a great job at it, I gotta tell you. So tell us, how does somebody get a hold of you? We'll try and avoid any weird people, like we mentioned earlier, trying to get on the podcast. But I'm sure everybody watching this show is super awesome anyway. You got nothing to worry about. So if they want to get in touch with you, they have questions on cryptocurrency, how'd you do it, going through your struggles, going from entrepreneurship to the podcast, coming out in nightlife, like how do they get in touch with you, Jake?
I'm super easy to get a hold of. It's at Jake Gallen, JakeGallen. I'm most active on Instagram and Twitter, but I'm on pretty much every social media platform. If you'd like to subscribe to the show, you could check it out on YouTube, where I video record all of the podcasts so you could see in a Joe Rogan kind of style. And also I've been adding additional content mechanisms as well as I build out my own brand. Also, you could find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much any podcasting directory. It's just called The Guest List, or type in Jake Gallen and everything will pop up. Send me a DM. I will always respond. I just highly encourage entrepreneurs, especially if you live out here in Vegas, to just reach out to people, go out there, build your mission, and just be inspired. Because if you do find some resistance on the journey that you're down, that's a good thing, because it means that nobody else has tried to pioneer that mission.
There you go. You heard it. Jake Gallen, the man that's shaking it up with the Sharks.
Woo!
And we will see you soon, folks. Have a great day.
See ya.